Today, on a special DVD review edition of the Danville discussion.
Mom! Phineas and Ferb are building a DVD menu!
Hello everybody and welcome to the Danville discussion, a podcast about all things related to Phineas and Ferb and beyond. I'm your host Caleb Doerksen, and some of you may know me from my YouTube channel of the same name, the one and only place for some web series related to animation such as Caleb Reviews. If this is your first time with the Danville discussion, well, the title says everything. This is a podcast where I talk about shows set in the Dan Poffenmeyer universe, aka the Dan and Swampy universe, aka the Dwampyverse. Specifically going through each episode of either Phineas and Ferb or Hamster and Gretel, and going through all the cultural or in-universe references and fun facts, and all that sort of thing, and then finally I end things off by giving each episode a roller coaster rating. But for this episode, I am going to be talking about Phineas and Ferb, but I'm going to be getting into another special episode in which I'm going to review one of its compilation DVDs, starting with the first release, which is named after one of the episodes on the disc, and it's called The Fast and the Phineas. If you want to check out more episodes of the Danville discussion, then log on to anchor.fm/Caleb-Doerksen, and then it'll take you directly to the Danville discussion website on Anchor, which is now part of Spotify for podcasters. You can also share your feedback or ask some questions you may have about this episode by emailing us at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with Phineas and Ferb DVD in the subject line. So first things first, when was this DVD released? Now, this first came out on Tuesday, July 29th, 2008 in North America, and then it was released in parts of Europe, Latin America, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan between 2011 and 2012, with the Japanese release also getting a Blu-ray counterpart. Now let's start with the episode contents on the disc. The DVD has 5 half-hour episodes, starting with episode 9, which is One Good Scare Ought to Do It, and that was advertised as a never-before-seen episode because it was first released there before its TV premiere. And then there's episode 2, The Fast and the Phineas and Lawn Gnome Beach Party of Terror. Then episode 4, Are You My Mummy and Flop Stars, followed by episode 5, Raging Bully and Lice Candace Action, and finally episode 7, It's About Time. I've watched and reviewed all 5 of these episodes before through Disney Plus, and they are some solid episodes. However, when it comes to this DVD in particular, there's one thing I like to critique with these episodes, and that is the aspect ratio. Now, back in the day, many Disney Channel movies and Disney animated series during the 2000s were produced in 16:9 widescreen, but back then, because widescreen and high-definition TVs were slowly getting popular by the end of the decade, these programs were cropped to 4:3 pan and scan on their original Disney Channel airings for the SD feed and on their older DVD releases. Although some Disney Channel original movies like High School Musical 2 were released on Blu-ray and widescreen as well. And this DVD is no exception, where all 5 episodes were cropped to pan and scan. Of course, this is one of the 2 early Phineas and Ferb DVDs that are presented in this modified aspect ratio, the other being The Days of Summer. Honestly, if Disney decides to put out a whole box set of the show on DVD or Blu-ray, or even both, they might as well release all the episodes in widescreen with the same sources as Disney Plus and digital platforms, just like what they did with the Proud Family movie for the Proud Family Complete Original Series set, since that movie had a pan and scan DVD in 2005. Next up, I'm going to talk about the DVD menus. Now, I remember there was a time where DVD and Blu-ray menus used to be highly creative with their animations and designs. Nowadays, they're mostly bland and generic, with the most infamous examples being the recent Warner Brothers DVDs and Blu-rays. And for a DVD from 2008, they really look nice. When you enter the main menu for the first time, Candace says the same line she had at the end of the show's opening, except she points out that Phineas and Ferb are building a DVD menu before Ferb pushes the button on the remote, which activates a mechanical gate that transitions to the main menu. Most of the elements on the main menu are made of metal. On the right, you've got the Phineas and Ferb logo and all the menu options with their easy-find icons and stylized fonts, and on the left are various clips from the episodes on the disc. There is no animation for any menu selection you make, it just cuts to the next program or menu once you select it. On the episode selection menu, the background is Phineas and Ferb's backyard. In the middle are the episode frames on blueprints, with each blueprint being a frame from the episode. On the left is a mushroom, and on the top and bottom are the title and the index slides and main menu button, respectively. The bonus features menu has a modified version of Phineas and Ferb with tools and the sign with the logo placed in front of a sky background. The logo is replaced with the bonus feature selections, and the main menu button is in a metal box. The setup menu has a modified version of the promotional art of Flop Stars, with the Phineas and the Ferb tones text being changed to a setup text and the setup options in the circle. The subtitles menu has the promotional art of Are You My Mummy as the background, and the Register Your DVD menu has a modified version of the promotional art of Swinter, which isn't even on the disc, nor is its other paired segment, The Magnificent Few. And the sneak peeks menu is just the menu Disney had been using on their DVDs from 2004 to 2010. But yeah, the menus look really good. So lastly, moving on to the bonus features, it doesn't have a whole lot, though like a whole lot of other Disney DVDs at the time, this DVD has Disney's Fast Play, which is basically a startup feature that allows the main program and a selection of bonus features to be played automatically, usually with some trailers before the program, much like a VHS would, since 1, the VHS format was being phased out, and 2, some people who were familiar with VHS and new to DVD didn't like having to run into the DVD menus after the trailers were done. And the first DVD to include Fast Play was the 2004 release of Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, the Three Musketeers. They also had the Easy Find menus, which come with a series of symbols to indicate which category is which. A film strip for deleted scenes, a clapperboard for outtakes and bloopers, a musical note for music and more, a circle with 4 triangles around it for games and activities, a director's chair for Backstage Disney, and a film reel for a bonus episode or short. But the real bonus features are one from Backstage Disney and one from Games and Activities. For Backstage Disney, there's the original storyboard pitch by Dan Povenmire, which I talked about and already gave my thoughts for last episode, and for Games and Activities, they have the Homemade Tree Shade Arcade, which includes 4 games: Agent P, Smack-A-Gnome, Fasten the Phineas, and Prance Askance Execution. All these games only require one control, and that is the arrow keys on the remote. Now, I played this DVD on my PS3, and so I used the controller as a substitute for a DVD or Blu-ray remote. So I controlled the disc with the D-pad, and the X button is enter, the circle button and the PlayStation button are to stop, the square button is the menu button, the left and right 1 buttons are to skip between chapters, left and right 2 triggers are to fast forward or rewind the playback, and the triangle button brings up all the other DVD controls. But starting with Agent P, what happens is that you have to select the right costume for Perry, or Agent P, to wear as he spies on Dr. Doofenshmirtz. If you get one wrong or exceed a few seconds, Doof will blow your cover as Agent P and the game will end. Now, what can I say about this game? It is a decent game, but I do sometimes have trouble locating the exact costume. I also saw that one of the clips used for the scenery is actually a clip of Candace jumping over all the buses while water skiing from Phineas and Ferb Get Busted, an episode that hadn't even aired in the US yet. Then for Smack-A-Gnome, it's a version of Whack-A-Mole where you have to hit the gnomes while avoiding any characters from the show dressed as gnomes. It's probably my favorite game among the bunch, even if I end up hitting the wrong directional button. But then there's Fast and the Phineas, where you bring the episode it's based on to life by steering Phineas left and right to avoid any obstacles, and every lap you pass, you're in a pit stop by the Fireside Girls, and every lap you approach, it gets harder with more obstacles, and in the final lap, you're on the highway after you jump the ramp while avoiding the Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated blimp. Now, I love the episode itself, but my god, the steering controls in this game are tedious sometimes. You have to tap the left or right buttons on the remote once to get Phineas to avoid the obstacles, but sometimes when I try to steer the car away, I accidentally press the buttons twice and run off the track, which costs 1 life. If you lose all 3 of your lives, the game ends, but each lap you pass, your lives are reset. The Fast and the Phineas game may be frustrating to play, but not quite as excruciating as the last one, freaking Prance Askance Execution. Now, this is like Dance Dance Revolution, except in this one, you have to make marionette puppet Lawrence dance in the same rhythm as puppet Linda to I'm Windana and I Wanna Have Fun by pressing exactly what's being highlighted on screen for the directional pad. If you press the wrong one, the game is over. I've tried this several times just like the Fast and the Phineas game, only to end up hitting the wrong one because the button can sometimes light up every second beat instead of every 4th beat until I finally got it right. My god, this is honestly the worst game of the bunch for me. But that's the Homemade Tree Shade Arcade, and those are all the bonus features, and that's also all that I have to talk about for the DVD itself. And with all those things combined, the episode contents, the aspect ratio, the menus, and the bonus features, it's not a perfect DVD, but it is still a good one. And now it's time to end all this with our roller coaster rating. Now, out of 10 roller coasters, what would I give this DVD? Overall, I would give the Fast and the Phineas 8.5 not too fast, not too Phineas roller coasters out of 10. Get it? The episodes themselves are good, despite the pan and scan cropping, and the menus are creative. The original pitch was okay, and some of the Homemade Tree Shade Arcade games are decent, while others not so much. So this is a good DVD overall, and whether we get an Ultimate Collection DVD or Blu-ray box set or not, I recommend getting this DVD. There are a few flaws, but even without Disney Plus, it is worth getting if you want to see how the pilot was pitched or try out the games. It's on Amazon if you want to buy it. Okay, so let's get to the Twitter poll results from over 1.5 months ago. Now, I'm not going to bring in the reporter this time just because this poll is dedicated to my decisions with how I do this podcast. So the question I asked my listeners was, should I review the rest of hashtag Hamster and Gretel's hashtag Season 1 all at once before going back to hashtag Phineas and Ferb? Hashtag Danville discussion poll. And the choices were A. Yes, finish Hamster and Gretel Season 1. Or B. No, continue the rotation. Now for the voting results. 17% said no, I should continue the rotation. But 83% said yes, I should finish Season 1 of Hamster and Gretel and then get back to Phineas and Ferb. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put the rotation on hold and finish the Hamster and Gretel episode so far, and when that's done, I'll get back to reviewing Phineas and Ferb. But for the next episode, I think I'm gonna do at least one more Phineas and Ferb episode for now, and for that episode, since the new Indiana Jones movie is in theaters, I'm gonna jump ahead to Season 3 and review Episode 86, aka Season 3 Episode 22, which has Agent Doof and Phineas and Ferb in the Temple of Watchadoon, because the latter segment is an Indiana Jones parody, so I invite you to tune in next time for that. Hey guys, before I end today's episode, I previously just came upon a last-minute update when browsing the Stitcher app prior to finishing the last bonus episode. I actually got this notice from Stitcher the moment I came on the app, but I skipped it and it was a little too late. But not really, since I looked online for the latest news on Stitcher, and this one article I found on Mashable stated that Stitcher will in fact shut down effective on August 29th. So what's going to happen now is that if you were listening to this podcast on Stitcher, you will no longer be able to do that. So I recommend listening to this on another podcast browser like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. So look for the Danville discussion on any of those sites and subscribe. Or you can also watch this podcast on YouTube or listen to it on Patreon if you're a patron. If not, then you can become a patron by selecting the drummer tier for $2 a month. And at the same time, not only will you get access to my podcast episodes for early access 1 to 2 days before they come out on YouTube and podcast services, but you can also get early access to my videos at the same time as well, and you can also get a shout out at the end of my regular videos and maybe even my podcast when I decide to put them there. But other than that, that's all I want to say that, yeah, Stitcher is officially shutting down on August 29th. And now to unpause the episode and get on with my contact information and social media plugs. So, with all that said, that's all I'm going to be talking about this week, so thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Danville Discussion. As for me, you can find me on my Facebook page at Real Caleb Doerksen, on my Tumblr, Twitter, and TikTok pages at Caleb Doerksen2 with the number 2 at the end and all in lowercase, on my alternate Twitter page at Caleb the PNF Guy, on my Instagram pages at Caleb.Doerksen for my main page or at Caleb Flynn Fletcher for my alternate page, and on my DeviantArt page at Caleb Doerksen20. Plus, I'm also now available on Instagram's threads in case something happens with Twitter. My handle is the same as my main Instagram handle at Caleb.Doerksen. That's CALEB.DOERKSEN, all in lowercase. And you can also find me on Discord by entering the username Caleb Doerksen, all in one word and all in lowercase. And if you go to the invite link in the description below, it'll also invite you to my Discord server so that you can talk with me about anything, including this podcast or my other content. You can also find me on YouTube, just search for Caleb Doerksen and look for the icon of me as a soldier. And if you want to support my work and get some great rewards all at once, which includes getting access to my content before anyone else, including my videos, my podcast episodes, and everything like that, then you can become a patron at patreon.com/Caleb Doerksen. Your support would be just great. As for this podcast, we are available to listen on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, Good Pods, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the link on iHeartRadio is www.iheart.com/podcast/997100607. So go there and it should take you to the official Danville discussion page on iHeartRadio, and then you can subscribe over there. Plus, you can also find us on Spotify for podcasters by using your Apple or Android device or going on the web at anchor.fm/Caleb-Doerksen. It'll take you directly to the Danville discussion page on Anchor, part of Spotify for podcasters. If you have listened to this episode on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast service, do you mind just going out to rate and review this show? That would be nice as long as it's respectful. And if you have been listening to this episode as a video on YouTube, then press that like button on our video and leave us a little comment with your thoughts on this DVD review. You can also share your feedback or ask some questions by sending us an email at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with Phineas and Ferb DVD in the subject line. Tune in next time for the newest episode of the Danville Discussion with all things related to Phineas and Ferb and beyond. And with that said, thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, this is Caleb, over and out. This podcast was created strictly and only for entertainment and information purposes. It is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company, Disney Television Animation, or their affiliates. All and any names, images, clips, sounds, or other items related to Phineas and Ferb, Milo Murphy's Law, Hamster and Gretel, and other Disney properties are trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective holders. All original content from this podcast is the intellectual property of the Danville discussion and the host or hosts running the podcast unless otherwise noted.